Not every tradition comes from fear. Some come from love. Some come from manners. And some come from something so old no one remembers why it started. Tonight, around this same fire, I have 7 more stories for you. Let's begin. Story 1. Never cut salad with a knife. In France, there is a small rule you'll notice at almost any dinner table. Salad is never cut with a knife. Instead, the leaves are folded carefully onto the fork, no matter how large or awkward they are. To an outsider, it looks like unnecessary effort. One common explanation goes back centuries, to a time when knives were made of raw steel that reacted with vinegar in the dressing, leaving both the metal and the salad with a faint, unpleasant metallic taste. Stainless steel eventually solved the problem entirely. The habit did not disappear. Even today, in homes across France, a knife resting untouched beside a salad bowl is simply how the meal is meant to look. A knife left untouched at a French table is one thing. In Mongolia, touching someone's foot by accident demands an entirely different kind of response. Story 2. The handshake you owe after a careless step. In Mongolia, if you accidentally step on someone's foot, even for half a second, you are expected to do something immediately. Shake their hand. It sounds like a strange overreaction to something so small, but according to old Mongolian belief, stepping on someone's foot without shaking hands afterward can be understood as an insult or even a sign of aggression. So the handshake exists to undo the moment instantly. A small gesture that says, clearly, this was an accident and nothing more. Even now, across Mongolia, you'll see it happen in crowded markets and busy train platforms. A foot brushes another, and almost on reflex, 2 strangers' hands meet before either of them says a single word. A handshake can undo an accident in a crowd. In Ireland, one particular tree, standing completely alone in an open field, is something even modern farmers won't touch. Story 3. The tree you never cut down. Across the Irish countryside, you'll sometimes spot something unusual. A single hawthorn tree, standing entirely alone in the middle of an open field, while every tree around it was cleared away generations ago. This is often called a fairy thorn. Old Irish belief holds that lone hawthorn trees mark a gathering place for the good people, fairies who are best left undisturbed. Cutting one down, tradition warns, invites serious misfortune, illness in the family, dying livestock, bad luck that lingers for years, not days. So farmers plow around them. Roads occasionally bend around them. Fields are shaped around a single tree that produces no crop and gives no shade worth mentioning. Even today, some landowners who don't believe a word of the old stories will still, quietly, leave the tree exactly where it stands, just in case. Some old fears protect a single tree. In Turkey, there's one object people go out of their way to never place directly into someone else's hand. Story 4. Never hand someone a knife. In Turkey, if you need to give someone a knife or a pair of scissors, there's one thing you should never do. Place it directly into their hand. Instead, it's set down on the table or the counter, allowing the other person to pick it up themselves. The belief is old and specific. Passing a blade hand to hand is thought to symbolically pass along conflict, even the possibility of the 2 people becoming enemies. To many, it's not about superstition anymore. It's simply how a kitchen works. A guest in a Turkish home might not even notice the habit at first, until they reach for a knife and watch it slide gently across the counter toward them instead of into their palm. Not every old belief is about avoiding danger, though. In Norway, one of the coldest countries on earth, there is a tradition that looks, to outsiders, like the exact opposite of caution. Story 5. Sleeping outside in the freezing cold. In Norway and across much of Scandinavia, you'll often see something that stops visitors in their tracks. A baby, bundled tightly in blankets, sleeping soundly in a stroller, parked outside in freezing winter air. Sometimes at a cafe, sometimes right outside the front door. To many outsiders, it looks alarming. Scandinavian parents often say that the cool, fresh air helps babies sleep longer and more peacefully. Small thermometers are often clipped to the stroller. The baby is dressed warmly, in layers, and parents check on them often through a window or a baby monitor left just inside. It isn't neglect, it's routine, practiced calmly, generation after generation, in temperatures that make most outsiders reach instinctively for another blanket of their own. If cold air is trusted to protect a child in Norway, in the United Kingdom, a single bird in the sky is still enough to make grown adults stop and speak out loud. Story 6. Greeting the Lonely Magpie. In the United Kingdom, there's an old rhyme almost everyone learns as a child. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy. It refers to magpies, specifically to how many you happen to see at once. Spot a single magpie alone, and tradition says bad luck may be on its way. But there's a way to cancel it. Speak to the bird directly. Good morning, Mr. Magpie. How is your wife today? The question, absurd as it sounds, is meant to acknowledge the magpie's mate, so the sorrow attached to seeing just one bird is quietly balanced out. Even now, walk through a park in England on a quiet morning, and you might catch someone, phone still in hand, murmuring a polite greeting to a bird that isn't listening, just in case it is. Some traditions protect the living from small, everyday bad luck. But one very old tradition from the hills near the Welsh border was built around protecting something far heavier, a person's soul after they had already died. Story 7. The Sin Eater. In parts of rural Wales and neighboring regions of England, there once existed a role almost no one speaks about anymore, the Sin Eater. When someone died, a small meal, usually bread and ale, was placed on the chest of the body, laid out for the funeral. A sin eater, often the poorest person in the village, someone with no other way to survive, would be paid a small sum to eat that meal. By doing so, tradition held, they took on the sins of the dead, allowing that person's soul to pass on to the next world unburdened. The sin eater themselves, however, carried a heavier and heavier weight with every funeral. Shunned by neighbors, rarely spoken to, living, quite literally, surrounded by a village's accumulated fear. By the early 20th century, the practice had almost disappeared into folklore, but in a few old churchyards near the Welsh border, faded gravestones still remain, marking the resting place of someone whose entire life was spent carrying away what no one else was willing to hold. So, 7 stories, 7 countries, 7 very different reasons to pause. A folded salad leaf, a handshake after a careless step, a lone tree left standing in an empty field, a knife set gently on a counter, a baby asleep in the cold, a quiet word to a lonely bird, a meal left for the dead. Some come from fear, some come from love, and one, quietly, came from mercy. Maybe that's the real thread tonight. Every culture has found its own way to carry what it cannot explain. So tell me, which one of these would you be willing to carry too?